Dan Graziano of ESPN wrote an article for ESPN.com predicting the head coaches that will be hired for each of the openings remaining in the NFL. If I were him, I would have also done the Patriots, just give myself a little free bingo square.
Yeah.
And Gerard Mayo, got it right.
Nailed it.
Adam Peters, GM, Washington, 2 for 2.
Crushing it.
I thought the one that he picked for Carolina is interesting. And not just the prediction, but how he did it. Dan Graziano of ESPN predicted Brian Callahan, Bengals offensive coordinator who does not call plays for the Bengals, as the next Panthers head coach. That's an interesting pick. I'll tell you why in a second. The way he did it is interesting because he couldn't even make a prediction without throwing a low blow jab at the Panthers. Right? He said, Callahan's my choice. The next sentence was this. I literally copied and pasted it because it's perfect. The next sentence in the article from Graziano was this. Industry insiders are finding this a tough one to call since there's skepticism about the willingness of candidates to work for impatient team owner David Tepper. Which is to say, they could have 7th pick, and Graziano and insiders, industry insiders, are skeptical even if, with no other options, if guys wouldn't go, I'll just stay a coordinator, or I'll go back to college. Then they'd rather do that than work for Tepper. That's about as insulting as you can get. Why? Because there's only 32 head coaching jobs in the NFL in the world. And there's no guarantee if you turn one down this year, there's going to be another option for you next year. The Ken Dorseys of the world exist, guys that were the hot shot names in coaching, and then by the end of the next year, they've given away their play calling duties. So just that alone is an insult. And then the pick I don't love. Callahan, to me, does anyone else, every time you say Callahan, you think of Callahan brake pads from Tommy Boy?
Oh, absolutely.
Callahan, Brian Callahan, the Bengals offensive coordinator, is the definition of settling to me. You want Slowick? You want Ben Johnson? The offensive coordinators of the Texans, of the Lions. You want those guys because of the offenses they run and the plays they call. You settle for Brian Callahan because of the offense he contributes to and the plays he doesn't call. The plays he suggests to Zach Taylor and maybe gets them called or not. If you want the young offensive wonderkind, if you want the next big thing in offensive football, you have to go try to get one of those guys, not somebody that's contributing to someone else's. And I know that there are, examples, right? McDaniel came from the Shanahan system, and it turns out he, was fully capable of running his own deal and designing his own plays. If you think you got the next Mike McDaniel, rub this in my face. If you think you have the next Mike McDaniel, a guy who, by the way, has a bit more of a pedigree than Brian Callahan, but I wouldn't say a ton more at the time. If you think you got that guy, you have the genius, then what are we waiting for? Brian Callahan's, I don't know if he's going to have his door beaten down with offers this year. The other thing I'll say about Callahan, and this would be the redeeming quality, is I do think the supposed superpowers of Joe Burrow and of Bryce Young are the same. More mobile than you think. But their superpower is knowing where to go with the ball, getting through progressions, being savvy, and being extremely accurate. Joe Burrow is, an MVP candidate any year he stays healthy, and he's not somebody with a laser rocket, ridiculous arm. Strong enough, but he's not Josh Allen. He's not Patrick Mahomes out there. That's probably how you would describe Bryce Young, right? He's strong enough. He can make the throws, but he's not Josh Allen. He's not Patrick Mahomes out there. So if you have an offense that works with Joe Burrow, there's probably elements you want to bring to an offense with Bryce Young. It's just you don't know if the part that's working with Joe Burrow is actually Callahan or not. Because if it's Zach Taylor, you're just taking a guy that was along for the ride. If Zach Taylor is the reason that offense is good, you're just taking a guy that was along for the ride.
Does he bring T. Higgins with him?
If he brings T. Higgins with him, then we can completely reevaluate this conversation because I think a number one wide receiver is that darn important to the Carolina Panthers. So if he brings T. Higgins, that's what do they do? The social media stuff. So you meet a guy, he's a 7, but he does the dishes. Oh, he's a 9. You meet a guy who's a 7, but he's really into video games. Oh, he's a 6, whatever it is. You meet an offensive coordinator who doesn't call plays, so he's a 6, but he brings T. Higgins with him. He's an 8. Like he goes up with T. Higgins. I'll give you that much.